tell you a little about what we do there. One of our main jobs is to keep detailed records of the migration patterns of raptors. For those of you who don't know, raptors are birds of prey, like hawks and eagles. Between August and December, we see around 20 different species migrating from Canada and New England, about 20,000 birds. Part of what attracts them to Hawk Mountain is the location on the east ridge of the Appalachian Mountains. What happens is that the sun warms the ridge in such a way that air currents are formed. The birds just sort of glide along on the air, so they use up very little energy. As volunteers, you'll be helping us keep accurate counts of the raptors. Any drop in number could mean something's gone wrong in the environment because of pesticides or disease, even hunting. We just had a scare with the broad-winged hawks. Their numbers have dropped drastically over the last 10 years. It was suggested that the birds may have changed their migratory route. So for 11 days, we had several hundred volunteers stationed every 5 miles to observe and count. And sure enough, they discovered that instead of hugging the Appalachians as they'd always done, the broadwings were cutting a wider path over the Delaware River. Needless to say, we were greatly relieved. Everyone is interested in improving their diet. Adding grains is one of the easiest ways. Many people in the United States have a growing concern about nutrition, so grains are often served in restaurants. And many grains are now available in grocery stores too. Though for some, you still have to go to health food stores. You can stock up when you go, though, because uncooked grains keep a long time. You'll find that grains are easy to prepare. Many grains are as simple to cook as spaghetti. Barley, for instance, is just cooked in salted water. Remember, though, whole grain barley, the most nutritious kind, never will get as tender as spaghetti no matter how long it's cooked. Grain-based salads are easy too. Just use grains left over from a hot meal. You can even put together a grain salad hours before you need it, since grains don't wilt like lettuce does. But to get back to health factors, all grains are nutritious and many have special benefits. Barley has very little fat. Some experts believe that it may even reduce cholesterol levels. Jasmine rice is also low in fat, and it has a bonus in its wonderful aroma, a very special fragrance.
You've probably heard of peanut or shellfish allergies, but a meat allergy? Not as common. Even weirder is what might be causing it: tick bites, according to a study in the Journal of General Internal Medicine. A few years back, folks started showing up in emergency rooms in the southeast U.S. with hives, swelling, or worse, anaphylaxis, after eating red meat. For this study, researchers looked at 3 of those cases, and they found that tick bites, specifically those of the Lone Star tick, seemed to be the cause. The bitten victim's immune system appears to become sensitized to a substance called alpha-gal. And whereas all the major food allergies are triggered by proteins, the culprit here, alpha-gal, is a carbohydrate. Alpha-gal is found in the meat and fat of hoofed mammals, like cows, sheep, or pigs. So eating a burger can expose you to alpha-gal, which activates antibodies and leads to the release of histamines. Researchers say something similar to alpha-gal in the tick saliva may set off the immune system, which then goes after the alpha-gal in meat, and leaves a steak lover ticked off.
Now, millions of roses get handed out on Valentine's Day, but growing roses has an environmental impact worse than many other crops. Start with climate change. Most roses in the US and Europe are imported from warmer climes. All that flying and trucking adds thousands of metric tons of carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. Then there's all the water needed to, well, water the flowers, and the runoff fouled by copious quantities of pesticides needed to make the roses look perfect. There's also the wildlife and workers poisoned by all that fumigation. Add to that habitat destruction where floral plantations displace native forest and wetlands. Finally, there's the refrigeration needed to keep those blooms fresh. The electricity is often produced by burning fossil fuels, and the refrigerant gases also exacerbate climate change. A more sustainable and possibly more romantic approach is to go with flowers certified by outfits like Veriflora, or even better, whatever flowers are in season locally. Of course, that's not much help for those of us in wintry climes. Maybe try writing a poem. Let's see. Roses are red, violets are blue.
Most of our serious illnesses and deaths in the U.S. now come from preventable diseases, such as heart disease. But we know what works to improve health. A new report recommends 43 changes that can make big improvements. To arrive at their recommendations, researchers reviewed more than 1,000 studies of public health. Their findings are in the American Heart Association journal, Circulation. Some of the suggestions, such as tightening restrictions on smoking, are already paying off in many areas. Others, such as increasing taxes for unhealthful foods, might face stiff opposition, but could pay off large dividends and health savings later. But some surprisingly simple suggestions could be easiest to institute. Try extending the hours for public parks and schools' recreation facilities, or improving sidewalks and visual appeal of neighborhoods to make people want to walk, bike, or run there more often. The authors of the paper argue that the next step is just for policymakers to put these changes into action.
Learning a new language can grow one's perspective. Now, scientists find that learning languages grows parts of the brain. Scientists studied the brains of students in the Swedish Armed Forces Interpreter Academy, who are required to learn new languages at a very fast rate. Many must become fluent in Arabic, Russian, and the Persian dialect Dari in just 13 months. The researchers compared the brains of these students to the brains of medical students, who also have to learn a tremendous amount in a very short period of time, but without the focus on languages. The brains of the language learners exhibited significant new growth in the hippocampus and parts of the cerebral cortex. The medical students' brains showed no observed growth. The study was in the journal Neuroimage. Interestingly, the amount of growth in the brains of the linguists correlated with better skills. So those with better language skills also experienced more growth in the hippocampus and areas of the cerebral cortex that relate to language. For other students who had to work harder to improve their language skills, the scientists found greater growth in the motor area of the cerebral cortex. Where and how much change takes place in the brain are linked to how easily one picks up a language, but it remains to be seen why this is.
It's springtime, and that means mud pies, bug bites, and scraped knees, if you're a preschooler. Or at least it used to. Health experts say young children should get at least an hour of physical activity a day, and studies have linked more time outside with motor development, improved mental health, better behavior, and of course, more sun-supplied vitamin D. But a new study of nearly 9,000 U.S. children found that almost half of preschool-aged kids are not getting outside at least once a day with their parents. Girls were even less likely to be taken outside than boys, and some families reported not taking their young children outside more than a few times a month. The findings are in archives of pediatric and adolescent medicine. Kids who had daycare were slightly less likely to get the time outside with a parent. They were also unlikely to get the recommended minimum 1 hour of physical activity while at daycare. So researchers recommended checking in with care providers about time outside. 1 hour out of 24 isn't too much to ask, right?
No more than 4 people are allowed in the lab. Packaging is very important to attract intentioned buyers. Participants are initially selected from a range of foundation subjects.